Really, it's an honor for me to be here today. It's a truly honor. Sharing with you this memorable day for the victory of Cuito Cuanavale. A victory that we are celebrating today after the Independence Day of Namibia, the last 21st March, and today 23. That is a day very important for Namibia, but also for the Southern Africa. That's why they mark this day as the Liberation Day for the Southern Africa. Today we are here in a free Namibia, independent Namibia, after this memorable day of Cuito Cuanavale. Really, I was in Angola. That was my first step in Africa. I was at that time 27 years old. I was very close to Namibia here in Kahama, fighting those troops from South Africa coming inside the territory, even from Namibia. Doing my best, without thinking that one day I will be here talking to you about what we made in Angola. Really? Sometimes you are in a place that you never know that you will be back. And to talk with the people that were together with you there about what you made in Angola. Never for me was an special day to say, I am here in Angola at that time, and I have to be prepared for one day, 30, 40 years later, to talk with those people that I contribute to be free. For the freedom of Namibia is not only me. We had in Angola more than 300,000 people from Cuba passed in that country doing the same I made, fighting against the apartheid troop, because I don't like to say the troop of South Africa because people can make a mistake. No, it's the apartheid troop that was there at that time in Angola, even occupying Namibia, and don't make any sense of here what the United Nations say for the resolution 435 to give the independence of Namibia. Today I have a small introduction, and I have also to say sorry because my English is not so clear. Maybe some people can understand what I am talking about. But anyway, if I need it, I have my translator here. My Google is here, translating everything if I need it. I also say every time that the new generation, and you have to know what happened in your history, what happened in Africa, what happened in the world in Angola, why and how Namibia became free, why Namibia became independent, how many people from Cuba, from Angola, from Namibia died fighting against the apartheid. And that is very important, the people, the new generation, to study and to know this history, very important for now and for the future generations. When you know your history, you know where you are, and you know also where you go. And that is important for the children that we have here today, to study and to know the history of the Southern Africa and the struggle that those countries made together to get independence, or to keep the independence of Angola, to get the independence of Namibia, and also to erase that system in South Africa at that time that was the apartheid. Always we talk about Cuito Cuanavale. Cuito Cuanavale was the last fight, the last battle. But everything is in 1975. when the victory from FAPLA and Cuban troops defeated the South African troops or the apartheid troops that were almost 80 kilometers from Luanda, trying to impeach the independence, the declaration of the independence of Angola. If that battle in 1975 never happened, if that victory never happened, I don't know at what time and how the victory and the independence of Namibia, the independence of Angola, the apartheid, how will be the history. Maybe different after that. But our determination, the determination of Angola, the FAPLA troop, the Cuban troop together fighting the South African or the apartheid troop in Kifangongo at 80 kilometers from Luanda determine today that we are celebrating also the Cuito Cuanavale victory that marked the last chance that South Africa had at that time to destroy the independence of Angola and to destroy Namibia. Because if Namibia is not independent, Namibia also will be destroyed. I have to say thank you very much, all of you, to be here today. I am very honored to be invited, and I will read my little speech, and later I want to hear you also. Not only asking me, because I see people here that they are a little older, and I know that they know better the history than those children here, and they was the people who was alive at the time of this victory. And that is very important also to hear their opinion, the history, what they feel about this victory for Cuito Cuanavale. I will start now saying or talk about what we prepare in my office. Dear comrades, it is an honor for me to address you on this magnificent day. The Battle of Cuito Cuanavale is considered one of the most important battles in the contemporary history. That is very important to know. Cuito Cuanavale was not a normal battle. Was one of the contemporary history, one of the most important. It reconfigured the political map of Southern Africa. The joint victory of Angola, Namibian, and Cuban troops against the South African invaders guaranteed the sovereignty of Angola, propitiated the independence of Namibia, and began the end of the apartheid regime in South Africa. With an internationalist vocation of Cuba faced alongside our brothers and sisters of Namibia and Angola, the South Africa Army that used powerful force, modern aviation, artillery, and a state-of-the-art army. I will narrate in a few words how the event before and during the battle took place. I will also explain why Quito was so important as a strategic point and why it was so important for the future of the world. The South African racist regime will not take the town of Cuito Cuanavale, which ultimately will become a symbol of the resistance and courage. During the second half of October 1978, in the Menongue-Cuito Cuanavale direction, an increase of the activity of South African aviation was observed when carrying out attack against FAPLA force that was displayed in that place at that moment. In those days, the operation Saluting October, that was at that time an operation between FAPLA trying to destroy FAPLA and UNITA battled in that place, but when I say here, in those days, the Operation Saluting October, performed by FAPLA against the main group of UNITA, was ending without achieving, were exhausted due to the offensive rings maintained during the displacement of its unit from Cuito Cuanavale to the Lombard River. In those difficult conditions, the FAPLA had to face the offensive launched by the South African troops and regular and semi-regular forces of UNITA. I hope that everybody knows what is UNITA at that time, and even today. Today is a political party in Angola, but at that time was a movement to try, supported by the apartheid, trying to destroy the government of Angola in order to install a government of UNITA in Angola. Until that moment, the enemy had not accepted frontal combat and continually retreated before the advance of the FAPLA force, but offering tactical resistance, which managed to fatigate the FAPLA combatants. This action of the South African troops in the aforementioned region were not casual. It responds to not well-conceived plan for the High Command of Pretoria that had previously prepared and located elite troops to deal the coup de grace to the FAPLA in the way to demand the cessation of aid of swap. That is what they wanted to destroy and to defeat the FAPLA troop in that place. What they wanted to do is to demand and to exige the cessation of the aid of swap in Angola territory, reconciliation with UNITA, the government of Angola and UNITA, and the withdrawal of the Cuban troops from Angola. South Africa intended to divide the FAPLA troops by destroying the Cuito Cuanavale River, bridge, which will allow them to achieve the above-mentioned goal that nearly succeeded. The government of Angola realized the difficult situation that FAPLA was facing and requested the support of Cuba. We have to be clear that the presence of Cuba in Angola was because the official government of Angola, guided by the MPLA, guided by Agostinho Neto at that time, knowing that the South African troops will enter in the territory of Angola, and they entered even, they was already inside, at that time, 1975, inside the territory of Angola. Agostinho Neto demand and request to Cuba to cooperate and to help Angola to defeat or to retreat the South African troops before they arrived to Luanda. The objective of them was to impeach the Declaration of Independence, the 11 November, the Declaration of Independence of Angola. And Fidel Castro accepted to cooperate and to help Angola in order to give that independence of that territory that you know very well that fight against the colonialism of Portuguese in order to destroy that system that you had until 1990 when you arrived to your independence. FAPLA was facing and requested the support of Cuba in accordance with the High Command of the Revolutionary Armed Force, Fuerzas Armadas de Cuba, decided to send an operational group from the General Staff of the military mission in Angola in 1988. And I was talking from the very beginning when we arrived in Angola in 1975, which will be in charge of collaborating with the FAPLA in the organization of the defense of that place in Cuito Cuanavale. From this point, the objectives were proposed as follows: maintain the defense of Cuito Cuanavale at all costs and guarantee that the enemy will not occupy the town. That was very important to never South African or apartheid troops occupy Cuito Cuanavale. That was very important for FAPLA and for Cuba that they never arrived to occupy this place. Analyze the situation of the FAPLA troops and in coordination with their command, study and adopt the necessary measures to ensure the stability of the defense. And the number 3 is keep informed the headquarters of the Cuban military mission about the situation in the region. From December 1987, the High Command of the South African Armed Force had created a strong grouping of troops. The victory was in March 1988, and since now, from November or December 1987, the South African troops were starting to organize to get the town of Cuito Cuanavale, the place where the Papla was fighting against UNITA. And the only objective at that time was to kill the Papla troop in that place. From December 1987, the High Command of the South African Armed Force had created a strong grouping of troops that, according to their assessment, would allow them to obtain the victory in Cuito Cuanavale. That was what the apartheid troop was thinking to do. This group of elite forces that was composed by infantry, tanks, mechanized infantry, long-range artillery, high-precision weapons, and anti-aircraft artillery, supported by combat of aviation. As I mentioned, they concentrated special attention on the destruction of the existing bridge over the Quito River to divide the defensive group, isolating the forces of power. From January to March 1988, the combined forces of Angola, Namibia, and Cuba engaged the apartheid regime and UNITA. Cuito Cuanavale is the place that became historic, but the operation theater was extended along wall line of hundreds of kilometers. Our soldiers, my brothers and sisters in arms, managed the military equipment with expertise and capability. Systematically, they forced the retreat of the South African fascist army and their allies. Around 40,000 Cuban, Angola, and Namibia soldiers participated in the military operation, with more than 500 tanks, thousands of guns, around 1,000 anti-aircraft weapons, who later led Cuito Cuanavale and then started the Cuban troop and Angola and the troop force plan started to advance toward Namibia in the borderline, to try to move all the South African troops at that time in that place out of the country of Angola. Supported by Cuban aviation, which implied that an advanced aid was built in a matter of weeks in Kahama, about 100 kilometers from Rwanda. That was the place where I was personally. The heroism displayed by Angola, Namibians, and Cubans could be appreciated in a phrase written by one of the apartheid invaders in the remains of the ruined building at the scene of the battle. He wrote in the words, "The MiG-23, that is the plane, the combat plane from that Cuba used at that time, broke our heart." He wrote like that. "The MiG-23 broke our heart." That is one South African apartheid soldier who wrote this. In Cuito Cuanavale, the Cuban Revolution risked everything, even its very existence, in combat against one of the strongest powers located in Africa, against one of the richest powers with an important industrial and technological development, and well armed. That is clear for everybody, the development of Angola, South Africa at that time. Cuito Cuanavale forced South Africans to respect the integrity and and guarantee the independence of Namibia at the negotiation table. Those events had also profoundly influenced the life of South Africa itself, and it was one of the reasons, one of the motivations, one of the great incentives that drove the apartheid to admit the solving the problem in Angola and Namibia, the forcing fighting apartheid, also the forcing to solving the problem in Angola and Namibia, and the forces of fighting apartheid also received benefit of our struggle. In Cuito Cuanavale, the combative brotherhood of Cuban armed forces, the fabric and the plan of swap was reaffirmed once again. The revolutionary solidarity of Cuba, Angola, Namibia, and the anti-apartheid forces in South Africa was consolidated forever. The will to fight of the Cuban, Angola, and Namibian people for freedom, independence, and national sovereignty was written with blood in the battlefield. Cuba only retained our fallen comrade. Eternal glory, to conclude, eternal glory to the heroes of the thousands of battles for the independence and sovereignty of the people. Glory to the Namibian, Angola, South African, and Cuban people. Homeland or die will win. That is an expression that we used to say every time in Cuba when we end and we call the people to the combat. Homeland or die, we will win. Thank you very much.
My name is Naimi Nagapandi, a fourth-year student at the University of Namibia. I'm an education student majoring in history. So my question is directed to the Ministry of Education, if we have any representative from the Ministry of Education. My question is, the event of Cuito Cuanavale appears to be a very important event in the history. But over the years, I myself was, and then I went to a secondary school, I completed, but I've come to learn of this event at the University of Namibia. And this event was introduced by Dr. I thank you, my lecturer here. So this event is very important, yet this event is missing in the Namibian curriculum. I have a revised syllabus of the grade 9. These learners are taught about any other event that appeared in history, how Namibia gained its independence, but then this event is one of the events that were left out in history. So if we continue like this means that a lot of learners will be left out and this information, they will not know or they will not be aware of this information since it's not recorded, and then I think that it's very important that we incorporate this information into the Namibian curriculum.
A third-year student from the University of Namibia, part of the History Society, as mentioned by the Director of Ceremony. I'm standing here with a heart that is broken. As our Secretary now has already alluded to. Even if we have to look at the history that is being displayed by our country, it is evident that Namibia does not appreciate this event. Why am I saying so? If you look at this museum that was erected to display our history, I'm speaking here without fear of contradiction. That well, let's look at this museum. We have this type of event displayed. But this was an event that took place almost close to what? In the 1980s. But yet they are not shown even in our own museum. Ask ourselves, where are we taking our country? Like the Secretary General has already alluded. We are more focused. We are more focused on the Vietnam Wars and other things in the First World War. But yet we are neglecting our own history. So I want to find out from our policymakers and curriculum developers, where are we taking our country? If events that took place in 1988 are not written in our curriculum, where are we taking Namibia? It's a high time that we have historians that are ready to display this history, regardless if they do not favor the political party. Thank you.
Reinforcing the need for inclusion of these events in the curriculum, I think we've taken note of that. It's a welcome in, and of course, as I have committed already, we will relay this information to our department responsible for curriculum development. On the second point, and that is part of the reason why we are here today, is is also to give impetus to the awareness creation about this event and other events. And as the previous MCF announced after this event, the colleague here who is our curator here for history will give us a short tour of how this event is incorporated in the displays of this particular building. So we'll give you a sense of how the event is promoted through this mission. I see that Ambassador wants to also make an intervention. I'll give you the floor.
Como dije en mi intervención, tratando de que fuera en inglés, creo yo.
As I said in my speech in English before,
Cuba llegó a Angola por la solicitud del gobierno de Agostino Neto, del MPLA,
Cuba arrived in Angola after it was requested by the government of Angola, leader at that time, by Agostino Neto, former president and former father of the Angola nation,
pidiendo la colaboración cubana para evitar que las tropas sudafricanas de ese momento arribaran a Luanda.
Angola requested the cooperation of Cuba to avoid that the South African apartheid regime troops arrived in Rwanda.
Les dije ahorita en una conversación, porque ni siquiera no estaba en el discurso, en las palabras escritas.
As I said before,
la batalla de Quipangón,
the Battle of Cuito Cuanavale,
que tuvo lugar a 80 kilómetros de Luanda,
that took place 80 kilometers from Rwanda,
fue en 1975.
was in 1975.
Noviembre de 1975.
November 1975.
Entre las tropas cubanas que en aquel momento pudieron llegar,
The battle was among the Cuban troops that arrived in Angola after the request of the Angolan government. The forces of the former liberation movement of Angola, FAPLA,
y también otros elementos que estaban en Angola contribuyendo por la independencia de este país.
and other combatants that were in Angola at that time contributing to the independence of that African country.
Luchando contra las tropas sudafricanas del apartheid,
We were fighting against the South African troops of the apartheid regime,
que intentaban llegar a Luanda
which were trying to get to Rwanda
para impedir la declaración de la independencia de ese hermano país.
for avoiding the declaration of independence of that brother country.
Los sudafricanos no pudieron llegar a Luanda
The South African troops couldn't arrive in Rwanda.
y durante el tiempo que estaban combatiendo en Quipangón,
During the time that they were fighting on Kifangondo,
la ceremonia de declaración de la independencia de Angola tuvo lugar.
the official ceremony of declaration of the independence of Angola took place.
Aquel glorioso noviembre 11 de 1975.
That wonderful November 11 of 1975.
Después de esa victoria en Quipangón,
After that battle in Kifangondo,
muchas batallas vinieron después.
a lot of battle came after.
Muchos combatientes murieron,
A lot of combatants died.
entregaron sus vidas
They gave their life
para llegar a un objetivo final:
to achieve an ultimate goal,
destruir las tropas del apartheid
to destroy the troops of the apartheid regime
dentro del territorio de Angola
inside the Angolan territory
y contribuir a que Angola
and to contribute that Angola
became free and independent. Hubo muchas cosas que pasaron en esa época
There were many things that happened at that time
pasó Casinga,
Kasinga was one of them.
un día histórico,
A historic day,
triste,
very sad,
pero que la sangre no corrió en vano.
but the blood
The blood was not watered in the soul in vain. No sé si se entendió. I don't know if you understand what I said. But the most important for that day is that also lo más importante de ese día
the most important thing
es
that day
que marcó también la determinación del pueblo de Namibia
is also gave Namibia the
Angola.
ultimate determination of Angola
para continuar combatiendo
to continue fighting
contra el apartheid.
against the apartheid.
Angola y Cuba
Angola and Cuba
no se derrotaron,
were not defeated at that time.
demostraron junto con Namibia las tropas del plan
They showed alongside the plant troops of Namibia
que ese día,
that very day,
ese día abominable, no sé si lo podrás decir en inglés, that very sad day,
that sad day, that disgraceful day,
cuando muchos namibios fueron asesinados,
when many Namibians were killed by the South African regime troops,
los cubanos,
Cubans,
los namibios,
Namibians,
los angolanos,
Angolans
decidieron honrar
decided to honor
la memoria de esos que murieron ese día.
the memory of those ones that fought that day.
Y la mejor forma de honrarlos
And the best way to honor
fue ganar la batalla de Cuito Cuanavale.
to win the Battle of Cuito Cuanavale.
Ese fue lo más importante para honrar esos muertos.
That was the main thing, the most important thing to honor those people that were killed in Mexico.
Como les dije,
As I told you,
muchas batallas tuvieron lugar.
a lot of battles took place.
Cuba contribuyó con los sobrevivientes de Namibia de ningún tipo.
Who didn't have convictions of any kind.
Solo matar a indefensos pueblos,
They only,
como sucedió ese
they
mismo
only
día.
wanted to kill indefense civilians. Happened that sad day.
Tuvimos muertos cubanos también allí.
We had Cubans that also died in that battle.
Nosotros no estábamos en Casinga en ese momento.
We were not in Kasinga at that
Cuando
moment.
digo nosotros es las tropas cubanas no estaban en Casinga.
I said us, I meant that the Cuban troops were not in Kasinga that day.
Pero inmediatamente que supieron lo que estaba pasando en Casinga,
As soon as they knew what was happening in Kasinga,
inmediatamente fueron a la ayuda de los namibios que allí estaban.
immediately they went to Kasinga to assist the civilians, the Namibian civilians that were there.
Encontraron muchos muertos,
They found a lot of dead people,
pero encontraron también la determinación de los sobrevivientes
but they also found the determination
de
of the
sobrevivir a
survivors
esa batalla
to continue alive,
y fueron ayudados también por las tropas cubanas en la fabra que allí llegaron
and they were assisted
para
by the Cuban
derrotar en
troops
ese
and the
momento,
Angolan troops that arrived
to
defeat at that moment
las tropas del apartheid que allí
the troops of the
estaban.
apartheid that were there.
Muchos de esos sobrevivientes fueron hacia Cuba.
Some of those survivors, a huge amount of them, went to
Muchos
Cuba.
eran niños como ellos que están aquí,
A lot of them
jóvenes,
were children as you that are today here. They were also young people.
heridos.
They were wounded.
Otros no estaban heridos,
Others
pero
not.
los rescatamos de ese lugar
But they were
y en coordinación con
we
las
rescued
fuerzas
them
de la
from
SWAPO
that place, and in coordination with the SWAPO leadership,
los llevamos para Cuba para que fueran tratados con los médicos cubanos en
we
Cuba.
took them to Cuba to receive some medical treatment in Cuba.
Pero también recibieron medical treatment but education also.
They also received education, not only medical treatment.
Después regresaron a Angola
some of them returned to Angola.
Otros fueron a hacer otros estudios en otros países como la RDA, la Democratic Republic of Germany.
Some of them went to other countries, such as Democratic Republic of Germany, to continue their studies.
Uno de los países del campo socialista en Europa,
One of the countries from the socialist group in Europe,
que ya hoy no existen como
that
país,
today doesn't exist anymore.
pero en ese momento contribuyó
But at that moment contributed
con Namibia también
with Namibia.
a salvar a muchos de esos agredidos en Casinga.
Some of those children that were survivors of Casinga.
Después de Casinga, y la honramos today, hoy,
After Casinga, what we also honor today,
hubo muchas batallas que compartimos con Angola
were a lot of battles that we shared with Angola
y con la SWAPO,
with
Plan.
this plan.
Yo conocí a muchos allá en
I
Angola,
met many plan
Estaban-
companies in Angola
estaban conmigo luchando como está él hoy parado aquí al lado.
that were with me fighting shoulder by shoulder as we are standing today.
Y fue muy interesante para mí.
And it was very
Yo tenía
very
27 años. ¿Quién tiene aquí 27
I
años?
was 27 years old. Who is here 27
O near
years old?
27.
Or near 27.
Y en ese momento, yo con esa edad, ya yo estaba combatiendo
And
ahí
that
en Angola.
moment with that age I was already
Para mí fue un honor,
It was an honor.
una gran
It
experiencia.
was a great experience.
Una experiencia que te da la convicción de lo que tú crees.
An experience that is given by the conviction of fighting, of being there fighting for what you believe.
Después de ese día,
After that day,
todo mi trabajo
all my
diplomático
diplomatic work and studies that I
han
have
sido
carried out
o han estado vinculados con África.
have been linked with Africa, linked to Africa.
Yo conocí namibios,
I met Namibians,
angolanos,
Angolans,
y juntos contribuimos
together
a derrotar el apartheid en Cuito Cuanavale.
the apartheid regime in Cuito Cuanavale.
Y ahí no nos detuvimos la victoria de la independencia de Namibia, pero fue la victoria de Cuito fue 2 años previos a la declaración de la independencia de Namibia, el 21 de marzo de 1990.
Quito was 2 years before the declaration of independence of Namibia.
Ese día, 21 de marzo de 1990,
That day, the 21st of March of 1990,
Cuba y Namibia firmaron el acta de establecimiento de las relaciones diplomáticas.
Cuba and Namibia signed the agreement that established the official relation between our two countries.
Pero muchos podrán pensar que Cuba y Namibia se conocieron a partir de ese día.
But many of you could think that our relations began that day,
Pero no es así.
but it is not like that.
Cuba y Namibia iniciaron sus relaciones desde los años 60.
Cuba and Namibia began our bilateral relations since the decade of the 60s of the 20th century.
Porque Cuba, como país socialista,
Because Cuba, as a socialist country,
que tuvo una revolución popular el 1 de enero de 1959,
which had a popular revolution that triumphed on the 1st of January of 1959,
país que declaró el socialismo ante una agresión de los Estados Unidos, una agresión armada contra nuestro país,
a country that declared socialism in our country after, in the middle of an aggression of the United States imperialism.
Cuando decimos agresión armada.
I said aggression, I meant armed aggression against Cuba.
Estados Unidos bombardeó La Habana.
The United States bombed Havana in 1961,
Y ese día,
and that very day,
que fue el preludio, yo no sé si lo
that
puedo
was the day that,
The day before.
the day before of the invasion.
declaramos el carácter socialista de nuestro país.
We declared that the Cuban Revolution were a socialist revolution.
And the next day, al día siguiente, nuestro pueblo
The next day, the Cuban people
fue a la guerra contra las tropas invasoras
went to the war against the invaders,
y fuimos a la guerra contra las tropas invasoras
and we went to the war
defendiendo
against the invaders,
nuestra revolución
defending our revolution
y nuestro sistema socialista que había sido declarado el día antes.
and our socialist system that was declared the day.
Por esa razón y por esa convicción de nuestros líderes, Fidel Castro,
Fidel Castro,
es que el internacionalismo se afianzó o se fijó o se consolidó en nuestro país.
is that we began with our internationalism, the assistance to other countries in the world.
Y esa década de 1960 fue rica en muchas independencias en África.
And during that decade of the 60s of the 20th century, a lot of African countries came to the independence.
Y nosotros, como país socialista y convencidos de la importancia de la independencia y de la desaparición del sistema colonialista,
And Cuba, as a socialist country that believed in the independence and in the disappearance of the disappearance of the colonialist regime,
apoyó también
supported
a la
also
naciente.
SWAPO, the
Esa,
recently born SWAPO.
esa SWAPO como movimiento de liberación.
SWAPO as a liberation movement.
Y apoyamos Frelimo
And we supported Frelimo in Mozambique.
en Mozambique y apoyamos el PAI en Guinea-Bissau.
We supported FIDE in Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde.
Y en ese proceso, que fueron años,
And during that process, that took years,
llegó
arrived
el 1975
in 1960,
Angola,
attacked
y Angola nos pidió a nosotros, a Cuba, la cooperación.
Angola kindly asked Cuba for cooperation for defeating apartheid.
Pero esta cooperación,
But this cooperation,
la llegada de las tropas cubanas a Angola,
the arrival of the Cuban troops to Angola,
no fue simplemente un barco que salió de Cuba y llegó a Luanda, a Luanda, cualquier punto de Angola.
it was not a vessel that left Cuba and arrived in. It was not only that.
Hubo muchos países que también ayudaron
There were many countries that also assisted.
y que ayudaron a Cuba en ese momento.
That assisted Cuba
Ayudaron a Cuba a desplegar las fuerzas cubanas en Angola.
Cuba was assisted by other countries to bring the Cuban troops from our national territory.
Y ahí tenemos a la República del Congo,
There, in that area, we have the Republic of Congo,
en esa época tan temprana, que colaboró también con Cuba en garantizar que las tropas pudieran entrar en territorio
At
angolano.
that time, the Republic of Congo assisted Cuba to guarantee that the Cuban troops
También
enter in Angolan territory.
también nos apoyó la República de Guinea,
We were also assisted by the Guinea Republic
que también contribuyeron creando
by creating bases for the Cuban troops after.
fue el gobierno de Sékou Touré
It was the government of Sékou Touré
quien nos apoyó en Guinea también. Y cuando digo nos apoyó, apoyó a Cuba,
supported Cuba in Guinea,
pero apoyó también a Angola,
supported also Angola.
porque esa tarea era para lograr impedir que las tropas sudafricanas llegaran a Luanda.
Because their assistance was also to avoid that the racist troops arrived in Cuba.
Es decir, que no fue una fácil operación.
It was not an easy operation.
Fue una operación difícil,
It was a hard
con muchos sacrificios,
There was a lot of sacrifice,
incluso de las familias cubanas,
even of the Cuban families
que fueron en ese momento afectadas porque
that were at that
más de
moment
2.000 cubanos murieron en la guerra en Angola.
were also affected because more than 2,000 Cuban fought in the war in Angola.
Y hoy también nosotros los honramos a ellos, honramos
We also
la memoria
honor him, their memory,
de los cubanos, de los angolanos,
the memory
de
of
los
the
namibios
Cubans, the Namibians,
que murieron ese día,
which
que murieron en esas batallas.
passed away during the battle.
Fueron muchas batallas, les digo, y les repito.
Were a lot of them.
Fue Kifangondo, una de las primeras.
Was one of the
Fue
first.
Tangamba,
Was Kangamba,
¿cuál más me queda por ahí?
Kasinga.
Casinga, y muchas más, muchos enfrentamientos entre las tropas cubanas, Pablo, Plan, contra las tropas sudamericanas
Plan against
ocupantes del territorio
South
angolano.
African troops that were occupying Angola territory.
Y hoy felizmente estamos todos aquí,
Today, we are glad of being here.
con nuestros niños vestidos de sus uniformes,
It's our children, so it's our children.
felices de vivir en un país independiente y soberano,
Happy because we are living in an independent and sovereign country,
pero tenemos que recordar el pasado.
but we must remember what happened.
Para saber dónde estamos y hacia dónde
To
vamos.
know where we are, to know where we are going.
Solo desearles a todos un feliz día de la victoria de Cuito Cuanavale y de la independencia de Namibia el 21 de marzo.
I just would like to wish all of you a happy Independence Day of Namibia, celebrated 2 days ago. Happy victory of Cuito Cuanavale Day.
La victoria de Cuito Cuanavale fue el inicio de las negociaciones que obligó a Sudáfrica a sentarse y reconocer la resolución 435.
The victory of Cuito Cuanavale made South Africa to sit at the negotiation table and to recognize that the resolution 435 of the Security Council of the United Nations,
que hizo posteriormente independiente a Namibia
that
con el esfuerzo del pueblo namibio,
the independence
con la contribución de los amigos
is the contribution of the foreign countries, also due to the fight of the Namibian people.
Cuba se siente honrada
Cuba is full
de haber tenido la oportunidad de asistir a esa tan significativa fecha
of having the opportunity to be present on that 21st of March of 1990,
sabiendo el resultado tan importante que iba a tener.
knowing the great result that we have.
Cuba hoy
Cuba today
se siente también agradecida
is also thankful
porque nosotros también aprendimos en el campo de batalla.
because we also learned in the battlefield,
Aprendimos con los amigos namibios,
we learned from the Namibian friends
con los angolanos y otros que también estaban allí contribuyendo en Angola.
and others that were also fighting.
Esa imagen que está allí de esa mujer
That image of that women there,
Namibia.
that people, Namibian women,
me recuerda el nombre
reminds me the name
que Cuba decidió dar a la operación
that Cuba gave to the operation, military operation,
para llevar las tropas hacia Angola.
for bringing the troops from Cuba to Angola.
Operación Carlota.
Carlota operation.
Carlota fue el nombre de una africana esclava en Cuba.
Carlota was the name of an African woman, African slave woman that was in Cuba
En 1847,
in 1847, 1970.
ella personalmente, ella
She
lideró una sublevación de esclavos en Cuba
guided the slaves rebellion in Cuba
contra el colonialismo
against the colonialism,
español en ese
the
momento.
Spaniard colonialism in Cuba.
Ella posteriormente fue asesinada
She was killed, she was assassinated.
y su movimiento fue borrado.
His movement was erased.
Pero ¿cómo lo borraron? Matando a todos los que contribuyeron con ella.
They did it by killing all of those ones that were with her at the rebellion.
Pero su ejemplo
But her example
sigue vivo hoy en Cuba
is still alive in Cuba.
y fue la decisión de Fidel Castro
It was Fidel's decision
para honrarla a ella,
to honor her,
darle el nombre Operación Carlota,
to give the name of Carlota Operation,
para una operación que iba a salvar también amigos africanos en contra del colonialismo.
for the assistance that would save our African brothers and sisters from the colonialism.
Entonces hoy también tenemos que decir y honrar a Carlota,
Therefore, today we also have to honor Carlota
porque ella fue un símbolo,
because she was a symbol in Cuba,
siendo ella una esclava africana en nuestro país.
being her an African slave.
Esa imagen que está ahí me recuerda a las imágenes de la época que hablan de ella.
Now, those images there remind me the pictures in Cuba that resemble her and the movement that she guided.
Entonces nos queda hoy decir, no olvidemos
So, I only would like to ask that it's important that we don't forget
y continuar trabajando
that we must continue working
por la amistad entre Cuba
for the friendship between Cuba
y Namibia,
and Namibia,
por la colaboración civil entre ambos países
for the civil cooperation between the two countries
que empezó desde la época de Angola,
that began when we were together fighting Angola,
porque a la misma vez que habían combatientes en Angola,
because while we have combatants in Angola,
también teníamos colaboración médica en Angola.
we also had medical cooperation at that time.
Maestros que enseñaban a los niños angolanos y namibios que allí
We
estaban.
also had teachers that had students from Angola,
Y hoy tenemos que continuar pensando en ello
and we must continue thinking on that today,
y mantener el espíritu de independencia
and to keep the spirit of independence, freedom,
y solo decirles muchas gracias
and only to reiterate
por
my
estar hoy
gratitude
aquí
for being here today,
y por compartir juntos, como mismo compartimos la batalla,
and today also sharing as we shared the battlefield,
compartir hoy las memorias de aquel momento.
to share today also the memory of Cunavale.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much.
Feel really honored here. First of all, I extend my greeting to His Excellency Sidenio Acosta, the ambassador of the Battle of Cuba in Namibia, who is also one of the Cuban internationalists that fought in the Angola. And that those battles that they fought contributed to the independence of Namibia and the changing of the landscape of Southern Africa as we know today. This continent or this region was the bone of contention and confrontation, where the forces of apartheid was hell-bent on destruction of economic as well as human life. But the Battle of Cuito Cuanavale changed the narratives, and it changed for the better, that today we sit here in peace and stability. A region that was known for bloodshed, a region that was known for confrontation, we are now pursuing regional integration. Thank you to our friends from Cuba who fought bravely with us in numerous battles that made the international community to realize that it was time to let the people of Namibia free. I always say that when we are talking of the Battle of Cuito Cuanavale, you don't talk it in isolation. It's a chain of events. You have to start with the 25th of April, 1974, when the military officer, what was then known the Carnation Revolution, overthrew the Marcelo Caetano regime, what was known as Estado de Novo. And from there, we came to Alvo Agreement that was signed on the 15th of January, 1975. That set up transition government that was to be composed of MPLA, UNITA, and FNLA. And also set the date of independence, 11 November 1975. But the transitional government collapsed, and the party started vying for power. And of course, we know FNLA was supported by Zaire with the CIA mercenaries. And one of the mercenaries who participated in that was John Stockwell. He wrote a book, In Search of Enemies. I'm sure if you go to the library, you find out. Because he detailed all the account. Then will take us to the Battle of Quifangoni. That battle, it was the time then when Cuba launched Operation Carota. Excellency, you can correct me. Operation Carota was launched on the 5th of November. And that Battle of Quifangoni was on the 10th of November, just 5 days after Operation Carota. And it was on the eve of Angola's independence. And that battle, the Cuban, the Angolan, the MPLA forces prevailed with the assistance of the company. If I'm not mistaken, that's the first time the Constitution was used in that battle. So if you are going to look into the event that led to Cuito Cuanavale, you have to start from there, because they are all connected. Meaning, the Cuban came to us first, of course. Then there was also another attack from the south, from the South Africa supporting UNITA. And they were stopped at the Battle of Ebo. The Cuban internationalists were under the commandant Diaz. He sacrificed on that battle. And then they were stopped there. That operation started from Operation Savannah. So those battles were the first and I call them Alpha and Cuito Cuanavale was Omega. So then, after the defeat of South Africa at that battle, they came home and they came up with what they call total strategy. The total strategy was aimed at destabilizing the region of Africa, Southern Africa, so that they become dependent on South Africa. And that event caused untold destruction in terms of economic infrastructure. And if you also look through the history, there was in 1978, there was an operation called Reindeer that led to the massacre of Kassim. But the event at the international level were also moving, and it was also the same year that Resolution 435 was adopted, negotiated by frontline state and Nigeria. And then 2 years later, SADC, Southern Africa Development Coordinating Conference, was established in Lusaka, Zambia, by 9 independent African states. Because they wanted to reduce the dependence on the apartheid South Africa. So that is the role that the region has taken. It was not easy. It cost many lives. Economic infrastructure were destroyed, particularly through this so-called total strategy. And then the event started unfolding, and I think it was 1985 when the Angolan launched the operation to dislodge the leader from Madinga. And I think that time, correctly, I've spoken to Okerisky. He told me that the Cubans did not want to participate because they felt that it was almost like a conventional war. And it lacked element of surprise. But somehow the Soviet advisors insisted. But at that time, correct me if I'm wrong, Ambassador, Cuba was maintaining a defense line from Menonge to, from Namibia to Menonge. And then when the Battle of Lumumba started, so then Cuba felt that it was getting close to their position. So and then they had to intervene. So that was then the Battle of Cuito Cuanavale, which started on the 14th of August, 1987, until the 23rd of March, 1988. And there were negotiations in London, in Cairo, in Brazzaville. Brazzaville came up with the Brazzaville Protocol.
Yeah.
Then from there they went to New York to sign the tripartite agreement. Then that tripartite agreement also then gave room for the Cuban and Angolans to sign a bilateral agreement for the troop withdrawal, which in the case was linked or as a precondition introduced by the Reagan administration when they came to the solution, has to be conditioned to the Cuban troop withdrawal. And then the Cuban in Angola were in Angola as per the bilateral agreement was not anyhow linked to Resolution 435. But of course the Reagan administration was insisting, of course, trying to help South Africa. And as this distraction was going with, most of countries in the West, they were burying their head in the sand, as if these things were not happening, as if the Charter of the United Nations was not speaking to the people of Southern Africa. But after we got independence, we had many friends. So, for you students, read history, know where you have come, know where you are, so that you can start imagining the future.
Doctor,
The future,
maybe just the mask a bit, just to get that short
yeah,
also.
the future of your country, the future of the region. What future do you want for this region? What future do you want for the country? It is you, that decision or the determination that you, and you cannot do it in isolation. You must do it together with people from other regions, because those who came up with the institutional framework, whether it's SADC, whether it is the military engagement to confront South African military, were united, and they had a purpose, clear purpose. It is then upon you to also come up with your purpose of the type of future you want. As Frank Fanon said, each generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it. Have that question or have that concept within you, so that one day you are going to assume the responsibility. And you cannot start only when you are asking. You start from now. This country is for you. Those people who died, bringing independence, they have fulfilled their mission. What are you going to do? What mission are you going to fulfill? Thank you very much for this opportunity.
My question is about just asking on behalf of all the teachers. Because when now we go and teach, we are teaching this topic about Cuito Cuanavale. And then while teaching, your learners ask you that who were the people from Namibia who were killed in the war, like who were those South Namibians who took part in the fight. Okay.
Thank you very much, Comrade Ambassador. I'm very elated to hear from you. My name is Franz. I think perhaps the question I'm trying to understand from you, Comrade Ambassador, Air Commander Fidel Castro. I'm a student of Air Commander Fidel Castro. But I'm trying to understand much of the story, much of the narrative that we are hearing, that we are getting in terms of the Cuban revolutionary support to, especially to the Southern Africa movement, that solidarity. If perhaps you have any kind of recollection, I'm trying to understand a socialist country that very much rooted in the support. Do you have a value in terms of money that spent in this cause? Because I'm trying really to put a picture of that time and the economic condition, but yet Cuba, under Fidel Castro, they managed to mobilize resources towards this cause. So I'm trying to understand and estimate in terms of monetary value because of the hardship and also just the sole commitment to help. In many cases, we as human beings or country, you have so much, but you are not even able to uplift your neighbor because of the greedy and the capitalist. I'm really trying to have a picture, an ideological orientation of the Cuban people who understand this cause of humanity and mobilize their resource towards the independence of others. So on one side is the ideological, but also if you can also speak about the value in terms of the lost Cuba in kind of experience because of this support to our cause. Maybe you can talk something in that line. I know it's a bit outside the diplomatic zone, but give it a try. Yeah.
Basically, what has been the implications to Cuba economically in terms of this, and then we can address.
Now, were they those refugees who were in South Africa or the ones who were in Namibia? Because if we see 1987, 1988, our country was still on the road towards independence. Now, how did they do their affairs and go in the other affairs?
Primero que todo, first of all, tenemos que tener claro algo.
Let's be clear.
Cuba llegó a Angola
Cuba fue en Angola,
por una decisión del gobierno
as I said before, for a decision of the independent government. Okay, the ambassador was saying that, as he mentioned before, it's important to be clear on that Cuba arrived in Angola after a request made by the sovereign government of that African country.
por una sola razón,
And that was only for one reason:
la invasión de Sudáfrica del apartheid al territorio angolano.
the South African invasion, the South African apartheid regime invasion to the Angolan territory.
El tema del conflicto interno angolano
The internal conflict in Angola
no era el objetivo de nuestra presencia.
was not the objective of the Cuban presence in Angola.
Fue la invasión extranjera al territorio angolano.
We were there to support Angola to fight this foreign invasion to their territory.
Eso tenemos que tenerlo claro.
You have to be clear on that.
Por esa razón, Cuba fue a apoyar a Angola contra la invasión sudafricana.
That's the reason Cuba went to Angola to support the country against the foreign invasion, the South African invasion.
Por esa razón, Cuba no estaba presente en Cuito Cuanavale cuando la FAPLA, es decir, el ejército angolano, combatía contra la UNITA.
For that reason, Cuba were not at Cuito Cuanavale when FAPLA were fighting against UNITA.
Estábamos en Angola,
We were in Angola,
estábamos allí
we were there,
at the time of Cuito Cuanavale, pero no estábamos en Cuito Cuanavale.
but we not in Quito before the
Y
fight.
solo cuando se implicó Sudáfrica
Where when South Africa was involved,
es que el gobierno sudafricano nos vuelve a pedir, el gobierno angolano
is when the Angolan government
nos pide otra vez
asked again
que lo asistamos en esa batalla
that we assisted on that battle
contra los sudafricanos.
against the South African troops.
Y ahí volvimos nosotros nuevamente a cooperar con
At
Angola.
that moment we cooperated with Angola.
Nosotros estábamos en otras posiciones dentro del territorio angolano.
We were in other positions within Angolan territory.
Recordemos que Cuba estuvo en Angola
We should remember that Cuba was in Angola
desde 1975
from 1975
hasta 1989-90 que empezó la retirada.
to 1990 when the withdrawal of the Cuban troops began.
Como parte de las negociaciones
As part of the negotiations
que se estaban teniendo lugar
that were taking place
para liberar, reconocer la resolución
for the
435
implementation of the resolution 435
y la retirada total de las tropas sudafricanas del territorio sudafricano, que ya desde esa época se habían ido.
and the full retreatment of the South African troops from Angola.
Yo recuerdo estando en Cajama,
I remember that when I was in Kahama,
desde Rundu,
from Rundu,
el batallón Búfalo
Buffalo Battalion
un batallón mercenario
mercenary battalion
pagado por
Battle of Cuito Cuanavale.
y Cuba dijo, si un soldado sudafricano cruza la frontera,
And Cuba said during the negotiation that if one South African soldier crossed the border,
Cuba va a detener la retirada de las tropas.
Cuba will stop the withdrawal of our troops.
Y Fidel Castro tomó la decisión inmediatamente cuando el batallón Búfalo entró a territorio angolano.
And when the Buffalo Battalion entered in Angolan territory, Fidel Castro took the decision
De detener la retirada.
of stopping the withdrawal of the Cuban
Eso
troops from
obligó
Angola,
al apartheid
and that implicated that the apartheid regime
de extraer de regreso inmediatamente al batallón Búfalo a su base en Rumbo.
that implied that the apartheid regime had to make their troops to go back from the border of Angola and Namibia to Windhoek, where they were based.
Posteriormente, no se sucedieron hechos similares
After that moment, we didn't experience similar issues,
y se logró establecer todo el proceso de negociación,
we managed to implement all the negotiation process.
que incluyó, por supuesto, la independencia de Namibia. Eso era
Implied
una
the independence of Namibia.
condición sine qua non
That was a sine qua non condition
para firmar el acuerdo como las partes lo
to
estaban
sign
procesando.
the agreement between the four parts that were on the negotiation table.
Eso después trajo cambios y sucedieron hechos dentro del territorio sudafricano
That afterwards brought some change on the
que
within
felizmente,
the South African territory. that happened.
trajo la desaparición del apartheid como sistema político en Sudáfrica.
Brought the destruction of the apartheid as the political regime in South Africa.
Trajo la liberación de Nelson Mandela
That brought the freedom to Nelson Mandela.
y trajo al poder también después en Sudáfrica
That also brought a few years later
la toma de poder y las elecciones que ganó el ANC junto con el grupo, la coalición que formaron con otros partidos como el Partido Comunista, los sindicatos
that
en Sudáfrica.
the ANC coalition won the elections in 1994 and took the political power in South Africa.
Eso fue una consecuencia
That was a direct consequence
de la victoria de Cuito
of
Cuanavale.
the victory in Cuito Cuanavale.
¿Qué representó para Cuba en materia económica?
What it represented, what does it
No sabría decir ahora cuánto dinero
Cuba
nosotros gastamos
speaking
en
in
Angola.
economical way? I don't know how many resources we spent in Angola for those years.
No tengo idea de cuánto fue el total.
It's impossible to calculate
Para
how much it
nosotros,
was.
lo más importante fue la decisión del pueblo cubano de apoyar a la liberación de Angola.
For us, the most important thing was the decision of the Cuban people to support and to assist the Angolan in the achievement and maintenance of their independence.
Como les dije anteriormente, muchos países ayudaron.
As I said before, many countries also assisted.
Unos con asistencia técnica,
Some of them with technical assistance,
otros con tropas como Cuba,
others with troops like Cuba,
otros trajeron asesores militares,
others sent to Angola military experts
que trabajaban directamente también con la FAPLA,
that were also working with public,
organizando
organizing
la batalla contra Sudáfrica.
the battle against South Africa.
Cuba no se arrepiente ni un minuto de haber estado en Angola.
Cuba doesn't regret
Yo mismo, no myself,
having been in Angola assisting.
no me arrepiento nunca de haber estado en esas batallas
even myself, I don't regret any second for being on those battles. I knew and I know for what I was fighting.
Y para mí no fue solo la victoria de Cuito Cuanavale,
For me, it was not only the victory in Cuito Cuanavale.
fueron muchas victorias
Where
que
a lot of
libramos
victories we achieved
y que contribuyeron
and that contributed
como un grano de arena, a grain of sand.
with a grain of sand.
I always say that the grain of sand made the beach. No, it's many grains of sand who made the beach. I was one of those grains. That's why today I am happy to be here sharing with you this history. To know the new generation coming and the future generation that they never will forget the meaning of the victory and the sacrifice of people fight for the independence.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think the principle is that sometimes it's not only the monetary investment, it's the solidarity, it's the care for humanity sometimes that will be bigger than economics, people's lives, making sure that human rights.
I think when Ambassador was speaking, I was became a bit emotional because El Comandante en Jefe, the task always said, when we went to Angola, we went there for the reason that the ambassador has explained, defend the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Angola. And when that historical mission was fulfilled, Cuba did not take any diamond or any resources. They only took, along with them, the remains of their dead soldiers, those who were injured, and that's all. There was no reason for economic gain. I want also to tell you that not only that Cuba assisted in the defense of the territorial integrity of Angola, but many of Africans were provided with school to study, to prepare for their future. In Cuba, and you cannot put a monetary value, particularly in the human life, that was sacrificed for the cause of which the fruit were enjoyed today. So there are many people who studied in Cuba. The first group, those who survived the Singa massacre, there were about 600 people. And then others followed. Two schools were established in the Isla de la Juventud. Henry Bedboy and Jose Abdal. And many people who study there are now, for example, the chief of police, Sebastian, General Ditu, the executive director of the State House, Ambassador Claudia, and many others.
Selma went to work.
Yes. So there are many others who study in Cuba, and they are now playing a vital role in the development of Cuba. Now, I think that was just to supplement what the ambassador was saying. Now, coming to the question as to who among Namibians participated in the Battle of Cuito Cuanavale, there were many Namibians who participated. If you were to talk to General Shah, and of course also the former minister, General Namor, they were the leadership, and I think General Namor and China were also directly involved in the Battle of Cuito Cuanavale, and many others. So I will not be able to tell you names. Then there was also a very significant battle that was also a determining factor. That is the Battle of Chipakaway on the 28th of July, 1988. I have spoken to those people who have participated there. I think one of them is called Johnny Katangara. Johnny Chauvel. His combat name is Katangara. He was their battalion was mixed with the Cubans. And they fought heroically when they were involved in that battle of Cuba. So, yes, there are people who are still alive participating in those battles. So I hope I have answered your question. And if I have not answered it, there's any clarity that you should need to explain. But I think that's all.